Welcome to the Story Lab and welcome once more to us talking about the Star Wars universe. Today, we are adapting a story from the expanded universe. In 2012, Disney acquired the Star Wars brand from George Lucas and subsequently made the decision to throw the old Star Wars expanded universe out. All the books, games, and comics were rebranded as Star Wars Legends, while Disney would work on a new sequel timeline. This allowed for a blank slate when it came to making new stories. However, the old EU had been quite loved and the new sequel movies divided the fanbase, with many hating the new stories. So, what if Disney had taken a different route, instead deciding to adapt one of the EU stories as their sequel? What story could have been the sequels? This is what we're looking at today, what could have been the Star Wars sequel trilogy, specifically by adapting a story from the expanded universe. Let's first go through some points that we know this story has to fulfill, so that we can choose the right EU story. It should be set after the Battle of Endor and deal with the New Republic. It should have the Force as a central theme. It should be exciting and have a lot of world building, while also fitting into no more than 3 movies. It should celebrate our old characters while introducing a new generation. The actors of the original movies are relatively old. The story should not rely on them to carry the plot. The movie's setting should work timeline-wise. The story should still work for people who have not read any EU material. The story must leave open the possibilities for further movies, if not encourage them. It must be possible to adapt the story at least to some degree in order to make the transition from book to movie. Unfortunately, none of the great stories from the expanded universe fits all these criteria perfectly. Especially the age or timeline criterion might be very difficult to fulfill. To match the exact ages of the actors, the story would have to play out after the Yuuzhan Vong War, which is very late in the timeline and could not be shown without context to audiences who do not know the entire EU. We can work with digital de-aging a bit, but even then, the story will still have its limitations. Consequently, the adaptability of the story will be even more crucial, as we have to be able to change certain aspects of it, if necessary, to accommodate the physical age of the actors. Let's list our options of stories from the Battle of Endor until the Yuuzhan Vong War. The Rogue Squadron stories. The Thrawn Trilogy. The Dark Empire story arc. The Jedi Academy trilogy. The Black Fleet crisis. The Corellia crisis. The Hand of Thrawn duology. The Young Jedi Knight story arc. And finally, the aforementioned Yuuzhan Vong War. Let's consider which of these stories fits our criteria the best. The Thrawn trilogy is great, but it does play shortly after the Battle of Endor and relies heavily on the original characters, introducing no one of the next generation. Similar points could be made about the Rogue Squadron stories. The Dark Empire story arc has the same problem. It relies heavily on Luke and Leia, though it would allow for some new characters to appear. The Jedi Academy trilogy does introduce many new characters, but is not structured as one story but as many concurring ones. The Black Fleet crisis is too small scale to be a whole trilogy. It might better work as one of the anthology films. The Corellia crisis around Centerpoint might be a good introduction to the Solo kids, but still has the problem of being too small scale. The Hand of Thrawn duology relies heavily on previous stories, the Thrawn trilogy in particular. The Young Jedi Knight series is too unfocused. The Shadow Academy storyline itself would be great, but it is too short. The New Jedi Order series, or the Yuuzhan Vong War, also relies significantly on the pre-story and is overall too big for just one trilogy. You see, it is not easy to choose. This is our choice for this experiment. We are going to adapt the Jedi Academy trilogy. There are several reasons for this choice. 1. Because it features a new enemy but still is about the fight against the Empire. 2. Because it deals a lot with the Force and the new Jedi Order. 3. Because it features the original characters in the role of teachers, leaders, and mentors. And last but not least, because it introduces a new generation of heroes that can then feature in new projects later. Also, this story can easily be adapted to a different setting in the timeline. The Solo kids can just be older and part of the Jedi Academy students. Admiral Daala can just have stayed in the Maul longer, and Exar Kun can have waited a few more years before making his move. And another important aspect is that this story has actually been retconned a bit before, so there should be no problem with slightly changing it again, even though our changes might need to be a bit broader this time. Let's see how it goes. We'll feed the data to our supercomputer and see what the story will be. Here we go, the Star Wars sequels, the Jedi Academy trilogy. Movie 1. It is about 20 years after the Battle of Endor, 25 after the Battle of Yavin. The Solo twins are about 15 years old. Anakin is still a bit younger. The twins live with Leia on Coruscant, but are bored of all the politics. They keep asking their mother and father to let them go to Yavin 4, where Luke Skywalker has founded a Jedi Academy to train the next generation of Jedi Knights. Anakin Solo lives together with other potential future Jedi on a hidden world. The New Republic has been a relatively stable government for the last 10 years at least. Only a few worlds in the galaxy are still clinging to the idea of the Empire, one of them being the Stormtrooper Academy world Carida. Other worlds have been out of contact with the galaxy for quite a while. At the beginning of the movie, Han Solo approaches Kessel, which is one of those worlds. On Kessel he learns that the planet has been taken over by gangster bosses who do not like the now respectable Solo. They throw Solo and Chewbacca into one of the spice mines on the planet. There the two meet Kip Duran, a young man that has lived in the spice mines for years. When the opportunity presents itself, they all break out. Meanwhile, in the galactic capital, Leia Organa Solo is preparing a reception for the Cadrian ambassador, hoping to convince him to finally join the Republic. At the same time, she has to deal with new potential Jedi recruits arriving, organizing rebuilding efforts in the city and her kids. It is all very stressful to her. Finally, she decides to let Jason and Jaina travel to Yavin with the new Jedi recruits and join the Jedi Academy there. In addition, her job sorting out Jedi applicants becomes easier when Wedge Antilles finds an old Jedi detector unit in the ruined parts of the city. Jason and Jaina travel to Yavin 4 and become acquainted with the other Jedi students there, most of which are older than they themselves: Koran Horn, Kyle Katarn, Kirana T. Streen, Gantoris and Dorsk 81 to name but a few. Luke Skywalker is delighted to have the twins there and continues to teach all to them. In particular, we see them listen to the stories of the Old Republic as told by the holocron of Master Vodo Bars, the master of the great Sith Lord Exar Kun. On yet another world, where blob races are being held, we see the search for new Jedi continue as Lando Calrissian, though unsuccessfully. However, Lando does learn of something shady going on in the Kessel system. He decides to go and have a look. On Kessel, Han Solo, Chewbacca and Kip Duran make a daring escape, reaching the black hole cluster in orbit and thanks to Kip's force talent finding a way into the Maw. There, they discover the isolated Maw installation, where Admiral Daala still guards the Imperial scientists who had come up with the basic designs of the Death Star. Solo, Chewie and Kip are captured and forced to tell Daala that the Empire has been defeated for years. In turn, the heroes learn that the Maw installation has come up with an even more terrifying weapon, the Sun Crusher, which does exactly what its name implies. Luckily, Solo manages to convince scientist Quizux that her work is evil, so that she helps the heroes escape and steal the Sun Crusher away from Admiral Daala. Meanwhile, Lando reaches Kessel and finds out that Han had been held prisoner there. Unable to do something on his own, he returns to Coruscant to tell Leia about the situation. She cannot leave either though, because the Cadrian ambassador is about to arrive, so Lando heads to Yavin instead, to ask Luke for help. On Yavin, Jason and Jaina train in the Force. During one of their training sessions in the jungle, they discover a mysterious dark pyramid temple. Concerned what it might be, they return to the Academy to tell Luke about it. But instead, they run into Lando and hear about their father's problems. Luke allows them to go with Lando to rescue their father. Jason and Jaina immediately prepare to leave. Not having time to talk to Luke, they tell Gantoris about the Dark Temple instead. Back on Coruscant, the Cadrian ambassador does arrive, but the reception does not go well. The Cardian ambassador spits in Chancellor Mon Mothma's face and Leia misses that he had done so with poison. At Kessel, Lando, Jason, and Jaina manage to steal back the Millennium Falcon from the gangsters, only to be chased by every ship on the planet. They escape towards the Maw. Just as they are about to enter the Maw, Han Solo, Chewie, and Kip come out of it with the Sun Crusher having destroyed one of Admiral Dala's 4 Star Destroyers with it. The remaining 3 Star Destroyers are directly behind them, bursting out of the Maw and into the space battle between the Millennium Falcon and the Kessel fleet. In the chaos, the heroes all escape. Safely back on Coruscant, to no one's surprise, the Jedi detector confirms that Kip Duran has massive Jedi potential, and Jason and Jaina promise to take him with them when they return to the Academy. However, on Yavin, not all is well, as some kind of dark spirit takes possession of Gantoris when he goes to check out the Dark Temple in the jungle. Movie 2. During the opening crawl we learn that Admiral Dala has escaped the battle at Kessel and is now terrorizing the New Republic with hit-and-run attacks. The government themselves have there while been discussing what to do with the Sun Crusher until finally deciding to hide it away forever. The movie opens with Kip Duran setting a course for the Sun Crusher to plunge into the gas giant Yavin. Then, Kip is transported down to the Jedi Academy on the Jungle Moon, where he reunites with Jason and Jaina. We then again get to see a bit of Jedi training, but our focus shifts to Gantoris, who has secretly built his own lightsaber and attacks Luke with it. Shortly after, the Jedi students find Gantoris horribly burned up, killed by some mysterious shadow. Unfortunately, the Solo twins do not realize that it has something to do with the Dark Temple out in the jungle. We then see how Leia and Admiral Akbar travel to the Vors and crash into their Citadel of Winds. This starts the parallel story of the movie, where Admiral Akbar quits his military service and returns to Mon Cala out of shame. Then, Leia learns that Mon Mothma is sick, dying in fact, and travels after Akbar to get him to come back. As opposed to the book, she asks Luke for help though, so Luke agrees once more to let Jason and Jaina go help her. Unfortunately, that leaves Kip isolated and vulnerable to the influences of the Shadow. We see how the Shadow begins to manipulate Kip until finally, the Jedi student is directed to the Dark Temple and is the first one to actually go all the way around it, discovering the giant statue of Exar Kuan, the Sith Lord who had ruled and been defeated on Yavin for so long ago. Now Kip realizes that the Shadow is none other than Exar Kuan. But, thinking he could outsmart Kuan, Kip continued to learn from him. Meanwhile, we observe the Mon Calamari Turpin being forced to head out into space and contact Carida, and we learn that he is a half-cyborg controlled by Imperial implants. We see Turpin report his success in removing Akbar and handing over the coordinates for the planet, where the Jedi children are hidden away. On the other side of the galaxy, the Solo twins arrive at Mon Cala with their mother and with the help of Ambassador Kliggle find Admiral Akbar in a lower level of the floating cities. Just then, Admiral Dala attacks the planet. The bombardment of his people's cities wakes up Akbar and he leads the counter-attack against Dala. Seeing right through the Imperial strategy, Akbar defeats her and destroys one of her Star Destroyers. Admiral Dala retreats to the Claudron Nebula and begrudgingly contacts Carida to ask for help. Fergan, the leader of Carida, who sees himself as the leader of the Empire, at first refuses to work with Dala but is then impressed by her plan to attack Coruscant next. Fergan agrees to have Turpin shut down the planetary defense shield should Dala really attempt her attack. This is when Dala reveals that she will crash one of her 2 remaining Star Destroyers into the galactic capital. On Yavin 4, there is a bit of excitement, as Mara Jade arrives at the Academy. We learn that she stops by every now and then, and there is some hinting at past adventures she had with Luke. Luke, a bit distracted by Mara's presence, misses how dark Kip Duran has become. Finally, everything comes to blow when Jason and Jaina, who had helped in the defense of Mon Cala, contact the Academy to report of the attack on Mon Cala, and that they were returning to Yavin with Kliggle, who had turned out to be Force-sensitive. This is when Kip snaps and demands something to be done about Dala. Luke tries to calm him down, but Kip runs off and steals Mara's ship. Han Solo, Chewbacca, and Lando Calrissian have a minor role in this movie. They are preparing a mission to the Moore installation to free the slaves there and destroy the prototype weapons. However, Han is concerned when he hears about the attack on Mon Cala and flies there. Lando decides to accompany him, so that Chewbacca can continue the preparations for the Moore mission. On his way to Mon Cala, Solo passes Mara Jade's ship, not knowing that it is not Jade but Kip flying it. Shortly thereafter, we see Kip flying to Vors, where Wedge Antilles and Qui Zux are helping with the rebuilding of the Citadel. Kip sneaks into Zux's apartment and uses his new dark side skills to rip all knowledge about the Sun Crusher out of Zux's head. Then, Kip returns to Yavin 4 to raise the Sun Crusher itself back out of the gas giant's atmosphere. Luke confronts Kip but is stunned by the discovery that Kip is not alone. Exar Kuan's spirit attacks Luke and knocks the Jedi Master out. Kip leaves with the Sun Crusher. Luke's comatose body is discovered by Jason and Jaina, who had just recently returned with Kliggle. Kip Duran steers the Sun Crusher towards the Claudron Nebula, where Darla is still preparing her great attack. There, Kip activates the Sun Crusher's supernova torpedoes and destroys all stars in the cluster, causing an unimaginable explosion that consumes Darla. Far across the galaxy, we hear Exar Kuan's spirit laugh joyfully. Movie 3. This movie starts only days after the last one. During the opening crawl we only learn that Luke has not yet awakened and that Kip has set a course for Carida, where he believed his brother to have been taken years ago. The biggest news is that Fergan has been preparing a mission to the Jedi Children planet to wipe out future prospects of the Jedi. The movie opens with Kip Duran attacking Carida and demanding to learn the fate of his brother. He is informed that his brother died and out of rage decides to destroy Carida itself by blowing up its sun. The Imperials panic, but only Fergan and his already prepared Star Destroyer get away. The destruction of Carida sends shockwaves throughout the Force, waking up Luke Skywalker's spirit, though he is not connected to his body now. Also, Turpfon's mind is freed and he is terrified to realize that he is a traitor. Things move very fast from here. As soon as Han, who traveled to Yavin with Leia and Lando, learns what Kip had done, he decides to go after the boy. Lando accompanies him, while Leia wants to stay with Luke. However, Turpfon arrives shortly after to inform Leia of Fergan's planned attack, so that Leia has to leave with Turpfon, leaving the Jedi students alone without their master. Meanwhile, in the spirit plane, Luke and Exar Kuan are locked in a battle of wills. Kuan uses some clever manipulation to attack Luke's body by controlling wild animals and Luke's student stream. But the Jedi students are able to fend off these attacks, and Luke learns to communicate to his students in his current state. Thus, he is able to inform them who their great enemy is. The Jedi students do not know how to defeat him though. Meanwhile, Chewbacca and Wedge Antilles finally start their mission to the Moor, surprising the outpost's few remaining defenses and freeing the slaves. However, the Imperial scientists manage to sneak aboard the prototype Death Star and escape. Wedge sends out a message to Yavin to ask the Jedi for help in stopping them. Leia and Turpfon have meanwhile reached Mon Cala and convinced Akbar to help them defend the Jedi Children hideout. They arrive there just in time to destroy the Star Destroyer, though Fergan has already landed and is attacking the children. Turpfon gets the chance to avenge himself by killing Fergan, which also inspires Akbar to come back to the New Republic, especially in the wake of Mon Mothma's disease. This is the first time that Turpfon hears of Mothma's state and he is terrified to realize that this was also a ploy of Fergan that he helped make possible. Mothma is infected by nanobots specifically calibrated to her DNA that Turpfon had provided Fergan with. While all of this is happening, Han and Lando have searched for Kip Duran, finally finding him by following his path of destruction. Han is able to talk to him long enough to calm him down a bit. At the same time, the Jedi students on Yavin finally manage to link themselves in the Force so strongly that they can defeat Exar Kuan, not only saving Luke but also freeing Kip from the dark side. Kip is extremely disturbed by what he had done, but Han tells him to go back to Coruscant and turn himself in. Han and Lando meanwhile plan to finally go help Chewie on Kessel, something that they had wanted to do ever since the middle of the second movie. On the Jedi Children planet, young Anakin Solo feels danger. Leia tells him that no, the danger had passed, but Anakin disagrees, not danger for him and his mother, but for his father. And Anakin is right, approaching the Maw is an unexpected danger, the battered Star Destroyer of Admiral Dala, who has somehow survived Kip's attack. On Yavin, Luke Skywalker, now reunited with his body, is informed by R2-D2 that Wedge had asked for help dealing with the prototype Death Star. Luke decides to take all his students and go help. As a sign that by defeating Exar Kun they had all passed their first test, Luke gives all his students ancient lightsabers. On Coruscant, Kip Duran is brought before Mon Mothma. He expresses his remorse for his actions, but before Mothma can answer, they receive a call from Trephan, who tells them about the nanovirus poison. The ever-present doctors complain that even knowing that it is a nanovirus, there was no way they could stop the poison. But Mon Mothma disagrees, a Jedi would be able to help her, and, she says, luckily a very potent Jedi was standing in front of her right now. Kip is overwhelmed by the trust she shows and of course agrees to help. All the stories are coming together now, as most of our protagonists approach the Maw. Han and Lando are almost destroyed by Dala's Star Destroyer but are saved when Leia's task force arrives at the Maw. Shortly after, Luke and the Jedi show up. Dala decides to destroy the Maw rather than letting it fall into her enemy's hands, but Han, Lando, and Leia can save Chewbacca's team before the installation falls apart. And Luke and the Jedi students quickly gain the upper hand on the Death Star prototype, securing it as well. Parallelly, Kip Duran is standing over Mon Mothma, concentrating strongly to one by one destroy the nanobots with the Force. In the end, the healing is completed just as the battle at the Maw is finished. The Empire is once more defeated, only Admiral Dala managed to escape. The movie ends with the Sun Crusher and the Death Star prototype both being thrown into the Maw. Our old heroes watch the dangerous superweapons disappear into the black holes. Kip Duran is pardoned and allowed to return to the Jedi Academy, where he will learn side by side with Jacen and Jaina as well as the next generation of Jedi. That is the end of the movie. As you might have noticed, there were in the end quite a few changes made compared to the books. Here is a list of the major changes. The setting in the timeline is changed, moving the story about 10 years later than in the original book. Subsequently, Jacen and Jaina Solo are teenagers and their story is greatly expanded compared to the book. They are also part of the action at many points, where they can take over some of the scene from the older generation of characters. Throughout the movies, several subplots from the book are removed, such as Lando's dealings with Mara Jade, Wedge's romance with Kwisatz, etc. Most of these were omitted to allow for a more focused storyline about Kip and his fall to the dark side. In line with that, the finale is much more concentrated, with every major character being present in one form or another and the Battle of the Maw happening very shortly after Exar Kuan's defeat. Another factor that had to change was the motivation behind Fergan's mission to the hidden Jedi planet. In the book he wants to steal baby Anakin to become a new emperor. Here it is more that he just wants to eliminate the Jedi. Certainly the biggest change, however, is that Kip's redemption is to heal Mon Mothma from her sickness. In the book, it is the Jedi healer Kligel who accomplishes this, while Kip's redemption is to use the Sun Crusher against the prototype Death Star and let both of them fall into the Maw. Our version was chosen because for Kip's redemption it is very impactful that Kip, the strongest of the Jedi, uses his immense power to destroy a little thing that has a great impact, an antithesis to his senseless large-scale destruction with the Sun Crusher. Okay, let's quickly summarize the 3 movies that could have been the sequels. Movie 1, Kessel, the Maw and Jedi Training. Jacen and Jaina start their studies at the Jedi Academy alongside other Jedi students. Han and Chewie get captured on Kessel, and subsequently discover Kip, the Maw installation and Admiral Dala. The Caradan ambassador visits Coruscant. Movie 2, Dala's Terror and Kip's Turn. Mon Mothma is dying and Admiral Akbar leaves the Republic. Admiral Dala attacks Mon Cala but loses badly. Kip Duran is turned to the dark side by Exar Kuan and goes on a rampage with the Sun Crusher. Luke Skywalker falls into a coma. Movie 3, Exar Kuan's defeat and victory over the Imperial forces. Kip destroys Carida, leading to rest of the plot points. Luke fights Exar Kuan and the Jedi students ban the ancient Sith. Kip is freed from Kuan's influence and turns himself in. Turpin the spy is freed from Imperial influence and helps Leia save the Jedi children. All forces meet at the Maw to fight it out. Kip heals Mon Mothma. Please remember that everything presented here is simply the results of an experiment. No part of this presentation is intended as a correction of an existing story or claims to be the real story. The selection or omission of any parts of the source material is not to be understood as commentary, positive or negative, on the original productions. These are simply thoughts and experiments based on existing material, and none of it could be created without the work of all those involved in creating the original works. As with any scientific result, you may utilize any of the story ideas that resulted from these experiments for your own experiments or production, while citing this experiment as its source. It is now closing time for our lab. Goodbye until next time.